All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to talk about dragon riding. I'm going to give you some tips and tricks from what I've learned. I'm not going to claim to be a dragon riding master who has done tons and tons of research and analyzed and studied, but I think I'm pretty good at dragon riding. So I'm going to give you some tips and tricks for the system and just how I used it throughout leveling. I've heard a lot of people complain about, running out of the energy that you have and stuff like that. And I feel like maybe just the approach needs to be a little bit different. So I want to give you guys some tips and tricks and things in this video. So first off, let's get in and talk about the mounts themselves, right? You're going to get a couple of different mounts over the course of playing through the storyline. The first one that you start out with is going to be your red proto drake, or your renewed proto drake. Here, it doesn't matter which dragon riding mount you use. It's just for appearances. They're going to have the same abilities, the same infects, and all that kind of stuff. So pick whichever one you like and whichever one you think looks cool. Also, I'll let you know that over time, some that you thought didn't look that good can look cool from you unlocking the customizations. All right, so if we get on our dragon mounts, you're going to see a couple of different things. If you're on the mini map, you're going to have a little rostrum of transformation. It looks like a dragon head. And then you'll also have a transformation trainer. And then normally you will have a dragon riding talents trainer as well. I'm not sure where that person is here in WoW Dragon. Maybe they will tell us. I'm not sure. Anyway, you don't need that person, and we're going to cover that here as well. So a couple of things to look out for there. There we go. Dragon riding trainer is right next to all this stuff. So we're going to go ahead and head over there. We're just going to ground mount walk our way over here while we talk about some stuff. So dragon riding uses a energy system where the energy that you use is called vigor. So vigor is represented by these little orbs right here. It recharges when you're grounded, whether mounted or not, and when you're dragon riding at high speeds. So as long as we are on the ground walking, whether we're mounted or we're not mounted, we're going to be recharging this resource. And we'll just use this so you guys can see that no matter what, it is going to be recharging for us. Okay, so that's the resource we're using for dragon riding. This resource is used to cast abilities when you dragon ride. Okay, so let's get in, and before we go out and kind of showcase all this stuff, let's talk about the rostrum of transformation, and let's take a look at the talent trees and our various abilities and stuff. So the rostrum of transformation is basically the barber shop for dragon riding mounts. You can come in here and you can take a look at your mount, and you can come in, you can customize each one of these. Now, super easy tip in case you did not know, you can customize multiple dragons and then hit accept, and it'll save the changes for all of them. So you don't need to do the red one, hit accept, do this, hit accept. So you can come in, and if I want to come over to this guy, I've got a new crest for him. I've got hair available. I could plug that in. I could also come over here and let's see. I don't really have a whole lot of stuff unlocked for this one. I can make him have short horns. And if I hit accept, right, and I come back out, we go back to the rostrum. If we come over here, he's going to have short horns and he's going to have the hair, right? So you can customize that stuff in here and save your changes for multiple dragons if you want to. All right. So just a couple quick tips. Also, when you come in here and you look through these, if it has a lock on it, it tells you where the source is. So if you want to hunt down something like, hey, the heavy skin scale type is from a dungeon drop, right? So you can get a kind of an idea for that. All right, so let's go over and take a look at the dragon riding talent tree. So this is the skill track. We'll click this. So this is what this looks like. Now, my first tip for you is you don't need to visit a dragon riding trainer in order to utilize the dragon riding talent tree. Right up here, you can click on your Dragon Isle summary. You can go into your dragon riding skills and unlocks. That's going to give you the talent tree, and you can actually change your talents on the fly. You can invest your talents on the fly. You do not have to go back to a trainer. You could do everything from wherever you're at in the world. Okay, so don't constantly go back to the trainer to invest your talent points. So your talent points are actually called dragon glyphs, and we'll talk about those here in just a little bit. But before we get into all this, let's take a look at the abilities that we have. So we have this resource called vigor that we're going to spend on these different abilities. So what are they? So the first one we have is we get dragon riding basics, okay? When falling from a high location, we basically glide, okay? Pointing ourselves downward is going to give us more momentum, and evening out can transfer the momentum forward. Pointing yourself upwards is going to slow you down, and when you're at your slowest, you will slowly fall to the ground, okay? So if we mount up here, and we'll just come over here to the edge, right? If we fall off the edge, we're just going to glide, Demon Hunter style, all right? If we point down, we're going to pick up speed. If we come up, we're going to lose speed, and eventually we're going to lose so much speed that our dragon is just going to land, right? And then at that point, we have to spend vigor to take off again, or if we're in a spot where we can glide, then we can start our glide again, right? So that's kind of like the basics. And there are some ways for us to overcome this that we'll get into talking about here, okay? But those are the basics. If you go glide, you just glide, you'll coast along. Point down, you'll pick up speed. Point up, you'll lose speed, and eventually you'll stop, okay? So let's go back into our tree. Now, we get two abilities with this. We get Surge Forward and Skyward Ascent. So Skyward Ascent is going to be the ability that is going to pop us off the ground. So if we're in an area where we can't just start gliding, like we can't just run off the edge of a cliff and just start, gliding like this, we can use Skyward Ascent to boost us up into the air so that we can then glide. Okay, this is, in my opinion, one of the absolute most important abilities that you're going to have as a dragon rider is Skyward Ascent. The next one we have is Surge Forward, and Surge Forward is going to flap us forward. So if we come out here and we start our little glide, we're just chilling, we can surge forward to kind of maintain the height that we're at, but to pick up speed, okay? So the main thing you're going to use Surge Forward for is to maintain your current altitude while picking up speed, okay? It's not really very good at pushing you super high into the sky. You can use it for that. So like I can come up here and I could surge forward and I get a little bit of air. See how much I got there? Like not very much. It doesn't really do a good job of like pushing you against your own momentum. So really it's used for, I'm gliding at this height and I want to keep gliding at this height, but I want to pick up some speed. And picking up speed is important because of some other abilities that we're going to have. So in general, I don't recommend spamming Surge Forward. That's not really, in my opinion, the way to dragon ride, okay? You use it sometimes if you just need a little bit more. You need a little bit more range, or you don't want to decrease your height in order to get some speed going. So, for example, if I wanted to fly over to this tower, right, I could glide over this way, and then I could drop my altitude to pick up speed and then kind of coast back out. And that's fine because this tower is pretty low below me. But if I had to dive to pick up speed again, now all of a sudden, I don't know if I'm going to make it up here. I am going to make it up here, but hopefully you get what I'm saying, right? So the alternative here is I can surge forward, and that will help me to pick up speed without having to drop way down in order to do that, okay? Now, each one of these abilities, our Surge Forward and also our Skyward Ascent, cost 1 vigor to use. So they cost 1 bubble to use. So we can use them quite a bit. By the time you get through the talent tree, you'll have 6 vigor. So you could Skyward Ascent 6 times or Surge Forward 6 times. You'll have a lot of options for what you do here. Okay, so let's get back into the tree and let's look at the other stuff we have. So the next thing we're going to unlock is, we get some of these like right off the bat. we're going to unlock vigor, which we talked about. So vigor is going to regenerate 1 vigor every 30 seconds. Okay, so every 30 seconds, you're going to get another bubble, regardless of what you're doing, right? Just period, every 30 seconds, you'll get one. So it takes 3 minutes by default to recharge this whole bar with no perks put in. That's a decently long time, which means that in general, you can't just hop on your flying mount and go halfway across the map. I will tell you, by the time you're done with the end of this tree, you can hop on your flying mount, and as long as you start from an appropriately high location, you can go all the way across the map, no problems. All right, the next thing we have is liftoff. When mounted on a dragon mount, double jump to launch upward and start gliding forward. What this does is it casts skyward ascent, basically, because it launches you upwards, but it also takes 1 of your vigor. It's essentially the same kind of thing. It's not quite the same because the skyward ascent gets you a little bit higher, but it's effectively like casting a skyward ascent. Okay. Then we have this thrill of the skies. This is super important. While dragon riding at high speeds, you regenerate 1 vigor every 15 seconds. So this is half the time it takes to generate 1 just by default, okay? So getting this thrill of the skies buff while you're flying is super important to being able to regenerate your vigor so that you can keep spending vigor on your abilities to keep you airborne. Now, if you look, when we start to glide, you're gonna see down here in my buffs, there's nothing, right? If we drop down, you're gonna see right there, we just got thrill of the skies. So when you see kind of the blue effect around your character, that means you have thrill of the skies. And usually once you have it, you're going to keep it even if you go up, unless you just point yourself straight up, and then you're going to lose momentum. Okay, so what you don't want to do is you don't want to get thrill of the skies, right? We got the buff again. And then try to point yourself up, because you're going to lose thrill of the skies. You're going to lose momentum. So you're kind of hitting yourself with 2 bad things there, right? Your speed slows down completely. So you're not going to get a lot of height. You're not going to be able to get to the places you want to go. And then also you lose that buff. So your vigor isn't regenerating as fast as it was before. So you're not going to have those abilities to help you get that little bit of extra air or distance that you need to get to where you want to go. So whenever possible, if you know you're going to travel for a decent distance, you want to make sure that you get that thrill of the skies buff as soon as possible. So you can get that by increasing your speed with a surge forward and doing a little bit of a dip. See how small that dip was that I had to get there in order to get thrill of the skies? Let's take a look at the difference real quick. Okay, so if we're starting here facing this tower and I just go off on a glide and then I'm going to dive down, as soon as I get the buff right there, I'm going to even back out. I'm kind of at the base of the tower, right? So let's come back up here. All right, and when we get here, we're going to face the tower again. This time when we glide, we're going to hit surge forward, and then we're going to dive down to get the rest of the buff, okay? So we're going to surge forward. We're going to dive down. As soon as we get the buff, look at that. We're like middle of the tower. So that's where I was saying that Thrill of the Skies really helps you get some speed, or not Thrill of the Skies, Surge Forward lets you get some speed so that you can maintain altitude while also achieving distance, okay? You guys give me a second. I'm going to have to fight this guy real quick. I didn't mean to aggro him, but, you know, is what it is. Oh, he's going to blow up. Boop. Okay. All right, so getting back into our talent tree, you can see how, hopefully you can see how Thrill of the Skies is super important to maintain when you're trying to achieve any sort of distance when you're dragon riding. Okay, the next thing we have is Winds of the Isles. It says you can detect and use gale winds that redirect your flight and propel you onwards, boosting your speed in the direction of the gale. Now, these show up as tornadoes on your minimap. And I don't have any I can show right now, but there's quite a few of them over here in the temporal conflux. So we'll fly over there before the video's over and I'll show you what these look like. But essentially they're little tornadoes and you can fly into them and they'll give you a nice boost without you having to use your dragon riding abilities to get that boost. So you will unlock the ability to use those as you go. Then we get Whirling Surge. So this is our third ability that we get as a dragon rider. Now, this one, in my opinion, is not super necessary in most cases. It costs 3 vigor, so it's very expensive, but this will give you a huge speed boost and it will push you forward pretty far. So let's look at this. If we glide and we Whirling Surge, we instantly get Thrill of the Skies and we get a nice push forward. So if you really, really, really need to maintain your altitude and get a speed boost and get Thrill of the Skies right away, you can use Whirling Surge, but it eats 3 of your vigor. And I really feel like it's not super necessary because you can achieve a similar result by doing a surge forward, grabbing Thrill of the Skies, and doing a skyward ascent, which takes 2 vigor. And in the time you're doing that, you're having vigor that's recharging. So similarly, we can glide, we can do our surge forward, we can dive down just a little bit, and then we could do a skyward ascent, and we're at basically the same level as we were for Whirling Surge, but we only use 2 vigor to accomplish it. So I haven't found a whole lot of uses for Whirling Surge. One thing that Whirling Surge absolutely excels at, though, is vertical momentum. Okay, so we kind of pointed this out before, but if we're on our dragon and we try to do a surge forward to go up, it doesn't really do much for us. So if we dive down and then we try to go up, we gain some height, right? We'll do this against a tower real quick, just so you guys can see. We gain some height, but it's not going to be a lot, right? So let's go test it out over... We'll go against this tower right here. Okay, we're going to have to regen some vigor to do this. But what we're going to do is we're going to do a skyward ascent, and then we're going to point ourselves up and do a surge forward and just kind of see where we end up, right? So skyward ascent, point up, surge forward. We made it to maybe the base of the tower, okay? So we need to wait for 4 vigor to regen here real quick. And then I will show you the difference between that and using skyward ascent. So we're going to do the same thing, and we're going to do a skyward ascent, and then we're going to roll that into a Whirling Surge. So, and you're going to see the difference here. If you need to go vertical and you have the vigor for it, then Whirling Surge can definitely get you there. You can also do the same thing with just pressing skyward ascent a lot of times as well, but sometimes that's the area I've seen Whirling Surge really matter. Also, Whirling Surge is good for some different reasons that we'll talk about when we get into the talent tree. Okay, so for this, we're going to do our skyward ascent, point ourselves upwards, and do a Whirling Surge. And you can see that by the time we lose altitude, we are above the tower. Okay, so that's one area where you can get a lot of benefit out of Whirling Surge, aside from the other things we're going to look at when we get in the talent tree. All right, the last ability that we have here is going to be Bronze Time Lock. So Bronze Time Lock, so this is going to mark a waypoint on your positional timeline. Use Bronze Rewind to rewind to this location. So if we go ahead and cast this here, it's going to cost 1 vigor. And then if we fall off the cliff... Oh man, I screwed up my glide. We can cast Bronze Rewind, and it will load us back to the position we're at. So if you're worried that you suck at dragon riding and you need a lot of practice and you don't want to have to constantly like walk up to the, place where you want to launch from, use bronze time lock. It's got a minute cooldown, but you can mark a spot here. You can go try a glide, test out some skills, make sure you have 1 vigor in reserve so that if you screw it all up and you're like, I need to try again, you can cast that and put yourself back at your initial point and try again. Okay, pretty straightforward ability there. It's very good to use for practice. It's good to use if you want to swoop down and gather some herbs and then pop back up to a high point to launch off to a different direction. There's some strategies for using it. It just has that 1 minute cooldown, so you can't like really abuse it too hard, but it is definitely there. All right, so let's get back into the talent tree. All right, so as you start to gather glyphs, which we'll look at in the future, you will gain these glyphs and you can spend them like talents in the dragon riding tree. So we're going to go through the tree and talk about the different talents and how they benefit you. So the first one here, Take to the Skies. You start out with 3 vigor by default. This will get you to 4 vigor. This is huge. Get this as soon as possible. 4 vigor is night and day between 3. It really is a really big deal to have the 4 vigor over the 3. So unlock this as soon as possible. Once you have this unlocked, you're going to get into this tier here where you can choose between 3 different abilities. You have to choose all 3 of them before you can choose this one. So you're going to get them all, but you can pick them in a particular order. So we have a couple things here. So while moving at low speeds, Surge Forward's effectiveness is increased by up to 125%, decreasing as speed increases. So this is a very nice talent to pick up because in the beginning, you're probably going to be moving at low speeds a lot. You're not going to be up high. You're going to be down on the ground. You're going to be questing. This helps you to pick up speed with your Surge Forward so that you can get into that Thrill of the Skies and regen vigor, or it just helps you to pick up speed if you're going from point A to point B while doing a quest. It's very, very nice. Then we have dynamic stretching. Your vigor acceleration rate is accelerated to 1 vigor every 25 seconds while grounded. So this will give you 1 vigor every 25 seconds instead of every 30 seconds. It's a 5-second reduction in the recharge rate on vigor. It's fine, but you definitely would rather have redirection first. Then over here we have Thrill Chaser. Thrill of the Skies generates 1 vigor every 10 seconds instead of every 15 seconds. So this shaves off 5 seconds on the vigor regeneration of Thrill of the Skies. So definitely huge. So generally the order I'm going to recommend for this is that you pick up Redirection because it's going to improve Surge Forward baseline. Then you pick up Thrill Chaser so that as you're maintaining that Thrill of the Skies buff, you're going to get your vigor back faster. And then finally you pick up Dynamic Stretching because you need to pick that up to get into the next tier. So from here, you have Onarin's Gusts. So Surge Forward evades Scale Chillers, Scale Chargers, and other obstacles encountered in time trials and races. So this is where Surge Forward becomes gets a little bit of a boost here. So just an overall improvement. There are enemies out there that are flying that can knock you off your mount and stuff like that. And also going through the races, there's going to be obstacles and things, and this allows you to cast Surge Forward for those. This is not a video about dragon racing or PvP or, mounted combat or any of that kind of stuff. This is an overall just dragon riding video, so we're not going to really get into that, but that's what this talent does. Then we have a choice node here, and there's 2 different things. So we have Dragon Rider's Initiative. When you're dragon riding at middle speed and above, you gain stacks of Dragon Rider's Initiative up to 10. Landing at mid to high speeds, you create a shockwave, which deals damage split amongst the enemies that you hit, and it disorients them as well. If you're landing at low speeds, then it will cancel your Dragon Rider's Initiative. Now, if you want to be hyper aggressive, this is super cool. The disorient effect is really awesome. So you can gather these stacks, and basically if you have speed and you're gathering those stacks up, and you want to cancel and you want to do a low landing, you can just point yourself straight up before you land, and then you'll do the soft landing. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. That's the easiest way to control whether or not you deal damage. So this ability can be a bit of a problem if you're on a gatherer and you're trying to just get an herb or a mine, a node, because you might land, cause a shockwave, and then you have to fight stuff that you maybe wouldn't have had to fight if you didn't have that ability. So you can counteract that by, again, just pointing yourself straight up before you land so that you come to the slow landing, right? So if you've got all this stuff, just point yourself up and just do a little soft landing there, right? So you can get that one, and then you can use it for the impact, the disorient, all that kind of stuff. Or the alternate one is Dragon Rider's Compassion. So while airborne, you gain stacks of Dragon Rider's Compassion up to 10. When you dismount, you gain a shield worth 1% of your health per stack, and you also gain movement speed 1% per stack, lasting 30 seconds. So with this one, you generate the same stacks, but when you land, you don't deal damage. You should get like a 10% shield, 10% HP shield, and a 10% movement speed buff for 30 seconds. So this is really nice if you're gathering and stuff like that, and you don't want to worry about dealing extra damage, or if you're on a character where having that shield is pretty nice. I had switched over to this because I was gathering, but I changed my professions, and I actually want to be on the Dragon Riders initiative because I love the idea of just swooping down and just slamming into stuff, disorienting everybody and dealing damage. But I think in a lot of cases, if you're in a character where you don't want to just aggressively do combat, then you're going to want to take Dragon Rider's Compassion. They're both good for different reasons. So then our next one here is going to be Restorative Travels. Your Vigor regeneration rate is accelerated to 1 every 20 seconds while grounded. Okay, so this is the follow-on from Dynamic Stretching. So this takes us from 30 seconds of ground regeneration down to 20. So at this point now, every 20 seconds, we're getting another bubble filled. Then we have Airborne Tumbling. Whirling Surge evades Wing Shredders and dismounts airborne enemy players. So again, Wing Shredders are going to be some of those enemies you can encounter. And also in PvP, this is going to be great. So if you are a PvPer, this is where you get some additional benefits from Whirling Surge. And it also explains why Whirling Surge has a 3 vigor cost, because they don't want you to be able to just spam knock people off their mounts, right? Makes sense. So after this, we've got Dragon Riding Learner. This is going to increase us to 5 vigor. Super huge as well. Then we have another choice node here. So this one, gathering herbs or minerals, will increase your vigor recharge rate by 10% for 10 seconds. So if you're going to be a gatherer, this is an absolutely great one to pick up, especially if you're a dedicated gatherer and that's all you're doing is going around and, grabbing nodes and, your herbs and your ore. Then picking this up, basically every time you gather, you're going to get a 10% increase to the rate at which your vigor recharges, and you're going to be flying around quite a bit, so this is super helpful. On the other hand, there's Dragon Rider's Hunt, basically for everybody else. Defeating an enemy is going to increase your vigor recharge rate by 10% for 3 seconds, and this effect can only occur once every 10 seconds. So this is pretty easy to manage. It's basically going to give you just some constant vigor regeneration. So every 10 seconds, you'll get 3 seconds of 10% increased vigor. So pretty nice. That's actually what I want on this character. So once we get down to here, then we are going to have our 3 down here. So again, you can choose these in whatever order you want. I absolutely recommend you get Beyond Infinity. This is going to increase your vigor to 6. So get this right away. Okay, so then you'll have the full 6 orbs to work with. Then we've got Yearning for the Sky. Your vigor regeneration rate is accelerated to 1 vigor every 15 seconds while grounded. Also nice, but I would recommend that you get At Home Aloft as your second pick, because Thrill of the Skies will now generate 1 vigor every 5 seconds. So go Beyond Infinity, At Home Aloft, and then Yearning for the Sky. Okay, so this is an overview of kind of like what is going to happen. By the time you're done getting this talent tree, you're going to have 6 vigor. You're going to have 1 vigor regenerated every 15 seconds while grounded. your Thrill of the Skies is going to generate 1 vigor every 5 seconds. And then you have a couple additional bonuses and perks, including 1 talent point that is going to give you an additional way to increase your regeneration of your vigor. So all these things are going to make dragon riding feel a lot better. But I think initially just harnessing the stuff that I mentioned earlier about using Thrill of the Skies is going to be huge. So what I want to do is I want to take you over and I want to show you what a dragon glyph looks like. I want to show you the updrafts, or I forget what they're called, the thingamajigs here. The Winds of the Isles. I want to show you those. And then I also want to show you the general technique that I used when I was leveling in order to manage my vigor and not have dragon riding feel terrible. So what we're going to do is we're going to head over to the temporal conflux because I believe I can show you everything over there. So the first thing we're going to do actually is we're going to get up high, right? It's worth you taking the time to get up high in order to start your dragon riding. So what I want to do is I want to come down here. We're going to fly over here. And we're going to get up on top of this tower. If you know you're going to go a long distance, take the extra 30 seconds to get up high. All right, so we're recharging. We're going to start up here. We're going to figure out what direction we need to go in. We need to go in this direction. Pretty much straight at this mountain. So what we're going to do here is we're going to point ourselves in a direction where we can kind of swing around these mountains because we don't want to waste a bunch on going over the mountains, right? So we can kind of dip through this valley, and that's going to help us out, right? So what we can do, we're going to launch off here. We'll do a little surge forward to get some speed going. We're going to dip down enough to get Thrill of the Skies. And then we're just going to even out. And we're going to glide on that. All right, if we feel like we're slowing down, we're just going to surge forward again, pick that up. And then at any point, we can just do a nice little upward skyward ascent to get us a little higher so we can dip down again. All right, and we're basically already over here. So these little tornado things here are the Winds of the Isles, and you can see them. Winds of the Isles, they show up as tornadoes on your minimap. And you can just use these. I'm not pressing any buttons here, but you can use these to give yourself a little boost. Okay? So you can get a little boost there. And then I will show you a glyph. There's one over here. So I'm just using my skyward ascent to, once you have, I'll give you this tip here. This is what a glyph looks like. Okay, this one has been collected. It'll stand out a little bit more if you haven't collected it yet. But what you have to do to get these is you just have to fly through them. And a lot of these glyphs that you collect, you're going to have to go like partway up a mountain, stop, let your vigor regen. And then you're going to have to go partway up a mountain, stop, let your vigor regen again. And then finally launch up and get the glyph, right? I recommend you can use handy notes, which is what I use, handy notes. And if you use handy notes with the Dragonflight here, that will let you see where the glyphs are at on your map, and you can go from there. So what I wanted to show you here as we were going into this is that if you notice, if I do skyward ascent here, it doesn't do anything. I don't get any Thrill of the Skies. However, if I have Thrill of the Skies, so I got it right there, and I skyward ascent, I will maintain Thrill of the Skies. Right? So if I boost up again, it keeps Thrill of the Skies on there. Okay, so before you go flapping around trying to get some of that vertical height that you need, make sure that on takeoff, that your number one priority, if you're trying to get any sort of distance, should be to get Thrill of the Skies ASAP, right? So it's going to be fall, glide, maybe dip a little bit, pick it up, and then now you can gain some height with skyward ascent while maintaining thrill of the skies so that you get the regeneration on the vigor, right? That's super important. So I want to, like I said, share with you how I was using dragon riding during my leveling process when I only had 3 or 4 vigor. The first thing I did was I ran out and I found enough glyphs to get 4 vigor, right? That's super huge. But let's say that I am right here and this is a quest giver, or I just completed a quest or whatever. And I need to fly over to this flight point, okay? Well, here's what I would do. I would figure out, okay, where's that flight point at? Right? Okay, it's up the road. So I'm going to head up the road a little ways just so I can get a feel for like how high this flight point is up. Okay, it's up there. So what am I going to do to get up there? All right, well, I'm going to skyward ascent, and then I'm just going to skyward ascent one more time. And then that's going to get me over here. Okay? So that's an easy one. Just double skyward ascent. I used 2 of my 4 vigor that I had. And now I'm up there. I'm turning in quest. I'm doing things. My vigor is regenerating. Okay, so I just finished a quest. And I want to head back to the quest giver. And the quest giver is, you know, over here at this circle. Over here at this thing. Okay, well, to make my life a little easier, I'm going to do skyward ascent. And then I'm just going to glide. I'm going to dip down and glide over there. And boom, now I can turn that quest in. I used 1 vigor. The key there, though, is that as you gain speed and momentum, once you get your buff, your thrill of the skies, about at that point, you can actually swoop back up with enough momentum to get you over obstacles, right? So you just do a jump, point yourself down towards the ground, kind of level out. And then at this point, if I needed that little extra distance, I would use my surge forward to just get me there, right? 2 vigor. I traveled a pretty good distance in 2 vigor. What I didn't do is I didn't try to like jump in the air and then just surge forward until I got to my destination, right? Because at that point, I'm using up so much vigor that, you know, it's not going to take me 3 minutes to do what I need to do at this quest hub. It's going to take me, 20, 30 seconds, and I'm going to be ready to go again. So in that time, with just the base level skills that you have here, you may have 30 seconds, you get a vigor back, or you may be down to where like, okay, you get one every 25 or every 20 seconds, right? So the idea here is that you only spend 1 to 2 vigor between hops. That way you have 2 that are just sitting there ready to be used. And by the time you do your stuff at your quest hub, you've probably got 1 or both of the ones you spent back. So I told people to don't when you're questing, don't think of your dragon as a flying mount. Think of it as a frog, basically. Like, I'm here at this quest hub and I need to get over to this skull because this is my quest objective. So I'm going to point myself in that direction so I have an idea of what I'm doing. I'm going to skyward ascent. I'm going to glide. If I need to, then I can like surge forward to get over the hill. And then I'm going to focus on keeping myself in areas where I can head downwards, right? And I can utilize the glide in order to get to where I'm going and not have to spam surge forward. What I absolutely do not want to do, right, is I don't want to point myself in a direction here where I'm trying to get up this cliff. Here's what I don't want to do. I don't want to do this and then point myself up and then make myself skyward surge a bunch of times to get over here. This is super inefficient and is not what you should do. Okay? What you should do, because you're paying for that momentum every single time, what you should do is you should just skyward ascent yourself up to a height that lets you pick up some momentum and use that to get up the cliff. And if you absolutely have to, you can do another one and again, point yourself down, give yourself some momentum, get thrill of the skies, I'm starting to slow down. Ideally, what I want to do when I'm this low is I want to boost myself back up again, and then I can dip down again and keep that speed and momentum going, right? So I'm almost never using surge forward. I'm usually using skyward ascent to get up, get a little height so I can get that downward momentum going again. And this is how you can see I'm not like, even though I have all the talents maxed out and everything here, I'm not really spending the vigor at a super high rate, right? It's one every now and again, but because I'm utilizing the downward momentum, because I'm focused on just boosting my height back up when I need to, I'm able to stay airborne a lot. And if it really comes down to it, I have all my remaining vigor to be able to keep myself airborne in case something happens. Like, you know, I run into a hill, or like, you know, I'm like, ah, man, I ran here and I ran out of momentum. Okay, cool. I just boost myself up again. And I know a lot of people talk about how, you know, it feels like, you know, dragon riding, I can't do this, I can't do that. It's really just, you just got to get a hang of this downward momentum and being really smart about how you use your vigor, right? So you can see, I mean, yes, my vigor does generate a lot faster than someone who doesn't have all the talent points. So you got to take that into consideration. Also, if I go way down here, I'm going to run into issues, right? Like if I've only got 3 vigor and I'm trying to get back up this cliff, like, I don't know if I'm going to make it all the time, right? But here we are, and I'm doing this on purpose just to show you that, like, you can stay very airborne a lot just using skyward ascent. You can, you know, this is practically a flying mount that's just faster, right? And I'm not using any of the fancy abilities, you know, none of that stuff. It's literally just keeping myself at a height to where I can point myself back down and keep and maintain that momentum as best as I possibly can. All right, so let's head back to the city. Which is over here. So once you get enough vigor, then you can absolutely just do stupid stuff like this and just climb and climb. And I'm literally just using skyward ascent here, maintaining my speed. Boom, here we are. We're back in town. So those are the things that I wanted to show you as far as dragon riding goes. Again, like I said, I wouldn't consider myself like a master. I haven't done like min-max research into all this stuff, but I just wanted to provide you guys with those tips, give you an overview, and kind of help you hopefully get a grasp on this system, because it's a little bit different, but it's so much fun. It's so much fun once you get the hang of it. And honestly, I think there's just some tips and things that you got to be aware of. Like, Thrill of the Skies is so huge, and if you don't really understand it or know how to use it, you know, it's going to mess you up. And I think a lot of people are probably going to look at Surge Forward and Whirling Surge and really overvalue them, when like it's all about maintaining your height, maintaining your momentum, maintaining Thrill of the Skies. And you can do most of that with Skyward Ascent. So don't forget, on the quest, act like a frog, right? Skyward Ascent, dive and glide, right? And if you really need to, spend one more on Skyward Ascent to dive and glide again to get to where you're going. Or if you're pretty close, you can hit that Surge Forward and just do the rest of it if you want. But you guys, this system is so fun. I just absolutely, it's so good. It's so good. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comment section below if you have any tips or questions. Let me know if this video helped you. I really hope that it does. I really hope that if you were struggling or if you were frustrated by dragon riding, hopefully this video has helped you to figure out some ways that you can practice, get better, and experience the joy of what is just a really cool and fun system, in my opinion. So thanks you guys for watching the video. I really appreciate it, and I will see you on the next one.